19th Amendment officially ratified. The 19th Amendment, guaranteeing women the right to vote, was formally added to the U.S. Constitution when Secretary of State Bainbridge Colby issued its proclamation. The amendment represented the culmination of more than 70 years of activism by women's suffrage advocates. Its text was straightforward. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex, followed by the statement that Congress had the authority to enforce the amendment through legislation. Still, barriers such as poll taxes, discriminatory state laws, and other measures prevented many women of color from exercising their right to vote for decades afterward. The women's suffrage movement began in the mid-19th century, led by women who had gained political experience through the abolitionist and temperance causes. In July 1848, about 200 activists, organized by Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott, gathered in Seneca Falls, New York, for the first Women's Rights Convention. The delegates adopted resolutions calling for equal opportunities in education and employment and, most controversially, the right to vote. Although the idea was ridiculed publicly and some early supporters abandoned the cause, the Seneca Falls Convention is recognized as the beginning of the organized women's suffrage movement in the United States. The first National Women's Rights Convention followed in 1850 and became an annual event, keeping the issue in the public eye. After the Civil War, the 15th Amendment granted African American men the right to vote, but Congress refused to extend suffrage to women in 1869. Two organizations were founded to address the issue: the National Woman Suffrage Association, led by Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, which pushed for a federal amendment, and the American Woman Suffrage Association, led by Lucy Stone, which focused on securing voting rights state by state. These groups merged in 1890 as the National American Woman Suffrage Association, the same year Wyoming became the first state to grant women full voting rights. By the turn of the 20th century, women's roles in American life were shifting. They were entering the workforce in greater numbers, receiving higher education, and having smaller families. Colorado, Utah, and Idaho also granted women's suffrage. In 1913, Alice Paul and others founded the Congressional Union for Women's Suffrage, which later became the National Woman's Party by 1916. The group had adopted more militant tactics, such as picketing the White House, staging marches, and committing acts of civil disobedience. The U.S. entry into World War I in 1917 further advanced the cause. Women's contributions to the war effort saw and resistance, and by 1918, women had full voting rights in 15 states. Both major political parties came out in support of a constitutional amendment. In January 1918, the House of Representatives passed the suffrage amendment, followed by Senate approval in June 1919. Over the next year, suffragists worked tirelessly to secure state ratifications. On August 18, 1920, Tennessee became the crucial 36th state to ratify, reaching the 3/4 threshold required for adoption. The certified record of Tennessee's vote was sent by train to Washington, D.C., and arrived in the early hours of August 26. That morning, at 8 a.m., Secretary of State Colby signed the proclamation at his home without ceremony, photographers, or the presence of suffrage leaders. Later that day, Carrie Chapin Catt, president of the National American Woman Suffrage Association, met with President Woodrow Wilson and First Lady Edith Wilson at the White House to mark the historic achievement.